Up next on Tech News Weekly, Elon Musk had quite a week, you may have heard, but is the Model 3 any better off for it? Genome editing with CRISPR and what that actually might mean for spreading genes in mammals. Magic Leap is one step closer to release, and there's still so much we don't know. And AI shows digital photo watermarks just how ineffective they really are. All that and more coming up next on Tech News Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Weekly is brought to you by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 40, recorded Thursday, July 12th, 2018. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly. This is the show where we talk to people who are making, breaking, molding out of clay, all of the biggest tech news of the week. I'm Jason Howell. Megan Maroney is out having a lot of fun, or so I've heard on the internet. Anyways, it's been quite a busy couple of weeks for those who happen to be following everything happening in Tesla and Elon Musk land. Every day, there seems to be a new story. It's kind of hard to keep up with it all. Some might say a new distraction. Joining us to pick it all apart is Sam Abuelsamid, Senior Research Analyst at Navigant Research and host of the Wheel Bearings podcast. Welcome back, Sam.
Hey, Jason. Great to be back again.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you back. I'm doing great. It's nice to see you on the stream here. So first, there's so many things that we can talk about here. Let's start with Elon's kind of string of distractions, it seems like. Obviously, there's the story of the Thai soccer team that was trapped in the cave just a few days ago. It was super hard to ignore that story. Everybody was following this closely. Elon wanted to get involved, and in the end, he actually flew a few submarines, if I'm not mistaken, out to help in the effort to save the kids that were trapped in the cave, but was a bit too late. That all happened prior to his involvement. Now a bunch of people are saying that he's more of an opportunist than an altruist, and I'm not sure where I stand on this. What do you think?
I think that, the reality, such as it is probably somewhere in between the two. I think that Elon, does have a good heart, and I think his heart's in the right place, with all the stuff that he does. I think that he really, he believes in the things he's doing, whether it's going to Mars or building EVs or, trying to get us off fossil fuels. I think in his heart, he believes all that stuff. He's really into it. At the same time, though, I think that he's not actually very good at executing on a lot of this stuff. Because his businesses are struggling, and they have been for a long time. I mean, they've never really been profitable. And right now, with Tesla in particular, he's going into a period where, they just came out of the second quarter where they did a mad rush in the last week of June to get 5,000 cars, 5,000 Model 3s completed. Doesn't mean they actually completely built 5,000 cars in a week, but they got 5,000 complete cars out during that final 7 days. And, now he's committed to making the company, having the company be profitable in the third and fourth quarters. And I think, there was a lot of people skeptical about, whether he can really do all this stuff. And so, and he was starting to get a lot of criticism for that. So I think part of it is, he's found a way to distract people, because a lot of the success of Tesla, in terms of, on the money side, has been because people believe in Elon and his vision. It's not so much that they've actually executed all that well in the cars. I mean, they've done some stuff very good. They've proven the viability of electric cars, but there's still a lot of problems with Tesla and the cars they build. And he really needs to, a lot of the people that have invested in the company and put money into the company, if you look at the Tesla forums and look at what the fans say, it's really all about believing in Elon and his vision. And so, by doing some of this stuff, I think he feels like he can buff up that, even if the companies may be struggling a little bit, he can buff up the cult of personality around him, which is what helps to keep the companies going financially.
Oh, that's a really good point. And it's not like he hasn't achieved some of these things, right? Like there was the South Australian power grid thing, and I think that's still an active process. It's not like that's dead in the water. He's his involvement is still active there. There was another power outage issue that he got involved with.
There's some stuff he was doing in Puerto Rico. There's been a number of projects, with power projects. Again, not making any money on any of that stuff yet, or even close to it. And so they've struggled, and they've scrambled to get some of that stuff going. And now the Boring Company, this deal in Chicago to try to dig a tunnel from downtown Chicago out to O'Hare Airport, claims he can do it for $1 billion. Pretty much nobody believes that he can do it for anywhere near that cost. So in order to do all this stuff, he's got to keep raising money because they don't make enough money from the businesses to fund all the things that he wants to do. And the only way to make any sense out of the people investing in the company is because they're investing in him and their belief in their faith in Elon, not so much the faith in the company itself. And so this is a way to like I say, to buff up that image of Elon to help keep the money rolling in.
And then it kind of seems like it's tipping over the other side. And another one that we just heard, I think, in the last couple of days is his dedication on Twitter to help Flint, Detroit, the Detroit area, Flint, with their toxicity in the water problem, which is a huge deal. Obviously, someone really, people really want this to happen. It's kind of potentially a very big humanitarian crisis as far as that's concerned. So why not Elon? But then there are a lot of critics.
The thing is, in Flint, the water crisis there, is something that's been going on for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
This is not a new thing that has just popped up this weekend.
Right.
If he really was interested, it's like, why didn't he step up 2 years ago to help fund, these repairs to the water system in Flint? Clearly, the state of Michigan has handled the situation extremely badly, and it's the state that caused the problem in the first place. The current administration is what caused the problem, but he could have stepped up any time in the last couple of years. The fact that he's doing it now, I think, is not coincidental.
Sure, it's good timing as far as that's concerned. Now, critics include one of Tesla's biggest shareholders, who basically is saying that Elon needs to rein it in, needs to focus on the stuff that he has direct control over. Obviously, one of those things would be Model 3 production. We've heard in recent weeks that that's all over the place, that there have been a lot of hiccups. And actually, Bloomberg published a pretty deep dive on this this morning on the background behind Model 3 production. And some of it is very bleak. I'm not sure if you had a chance to read through that, but did any of that kind of line up with things that you had already heard as far as how Model 3 production is happening? And do you think these distractions are pulling Elon away from where he needs to be?
I think that's absolutely the case. I mean, Elon Musk is the CEO of two major companies, and I guess he's CEO of Boring Company as well. And he's got all kinds of other side projects. And particularly in the case of Tesla, Tesla is a public company. They have a responsibility to their shareholders. They also have a responsibility to their customers to deliver, high quality products, reliable products. And as the CEO of the company, it's his responsibility to make sure that the company is executing. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't be involved in this other stuff. I have no issue with people getting involved in various kinds of philanthropic projects that are going to help make society better. But if it's taking away from his job, I think he does need to make a decision about what is he going to focus on? Is he going to focus on the company, and making sure that the company can survive, or is he going to focus on these other projects? If he wants to focus on these other projects, he probably should step aside as CEO. And frankly, I think regardless of the other projects, I think he should probably step aside as CEO, because while I admire his vision, I think that he's a terrible manager, and he's not actually very good at running companies. He's good at inspiring people, but not very good at running companies on a day-to-day basis. And it would probably be for the best if he did step aside as CEO and brought in people that actually know how to run the company on a day-to-day basis and operate it successfully. So I think he needs to make some hard decisions in his life.
Wow, I didn't expect you to say that. Have you felt this for a while? Have you felt that Elon might need to kind of step aside? And I imagine kind of recent news solidifies that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying that for a long time, that I think that Elon is not a great manager. I admire his vision. And the fact that electric vehicles have come as far as they have, in the last 10 years, isn't due in large part to that vision, and his efforts to get Tesla going, along with all the other people that have been part of that. Yeah. Similarly on the rocket side, with SpaceX, with commercial space flight, his efforts with SpaceX, have really pushed that industry forward. So I totally admire what he's trying to do and his vision. But I think that in order to really succeed at that, you have to, there's having a vision, and then you've got to be able to execute on that vision in order to have a sustainable business over the long run. And I think that he needs to, step aside from trying to do everything, trying to be the one guy that can run the company, because when you've got an operation that size, one person cannot do everything. You have to delegate, and he's terrible at delegating. He will not give up control to anyone else, and he needs to do that.
Yeah, I hear there's this other guy that's possibly looking for a job, Travis Kalanick. Probably a bad idea. And then finally, I also saw an article right before the show about the fact that the EV tax credit, the electric vehicle tax credit of $7,500, is about to go away. And that's always kind of been obviously a huge incentive for people buying Tesla vehicles. How do you think that's going to affect the Model 3 and all of their other vehicle sales going forward?
Yeah, when the tax credit program for EVs was set up about 10 years ago, they said it. The idea was to jumpstart the EV industry and get these vehicles into the marketplace, and to incentivize people to buy them. So the federal tax credit had a cap for each manufacturer of 200,000 vehicles, and once you've sold 200,000 EVs, then it starts to phase out. And so apparently Tesla hit that 200,000 sales threshold in the U.S. At the end of June. And so now, starting in the fourth quarter of this year, so starting in for anybody who buys a car after October 1st, for the next 6 months, that $7,500 drops to $3,750, and then from March 1st of next year, it drops again to $1,725, and then by October of next year, it's gone completely. So what that means, for people buying Model S's and X's, those cars start at $75,000, $80,000, go up to $140,000, $150,000. Those people probably aren't going to care all that much. I mean, if you can afford a $100,000 car, the $7,500 tax credit is not as big a deal. Where it's going to hurt is all those people that were counting on buying a $35,000 Model 3, which so far they have not delivered one of those, not even a single one. Every Model 3 delivered has cost a minimum of about $47,000 so far. So people that were hoping to, people that are mainstream customers, the kind of people that buy Honda Accords and Toyota Camrys and Ford Fusions, that were hoping to maybe get into a Model 3 and get that $7,500 tax credit, that brings it down into the mid $20,000 to upper $20,000 price range of one of those cars. They're not going to have that opportunity now. Yeah. Or at least if they don't get it before October, they won't have that opportunity. It'll be a significantly more expensive car, and I think that's going to hurt their sales. Yeah, I think so too. But I suppose we've still got a little bit of a ramp up until that happens. So we'll probably talk about it when that does actually happen. Sam, Abuelsamid, Navigant Research, obviously Wheel Bearings podcast, but navigantresearch.com. Where do you want people to follow you online? You can follow me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. You can find the stuff I write on Forbes. Just look for my name on Forbes. Just Google my name and you'll find me all over the place. I write on the Navigant Research blog. Dan Roth and I do the Wheel Bearings podcast more or less every week at wheelbearings.media. So just look for me and you'll find me somewhere. Awesome. Sam, it's been great getting you on again. Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Jason.
We'll
Have a great
day.
Soon.
You too. When the lines between technology and science intersect, there's one person who can pick it apart. And I'm thrilled to get the chance to bring her back on the show. It's been far too long. Welcome back, Dr. Kiki Sanford, host of This Week in Science and all-around awesome human being. How you doing?
I am doing fabulously. It's so great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome to see you again. Like I said, it's been too long. We thought it might be fun to bring you on and maybe dive into a few stories that you've been tracking and discussing on This Week in Science and following on your end of of things, of the technology world anyways. So we were just actually talking about Elon Musk, and if you want to travel to Mars like Elon Musk thinks we will, like any day now, we will first need to solve some really big problems, like how do we get there and back with the amount of fuel that's needed to do this? So tell us a little bit about how scientists say hydrogen can be harvested from water in microgravity.
Yeah, well, we know that hydrogen works really well as a fuel source. We have cars and buses and vans that are powered with hydrogen fuel cells these days. And so there is an idea that we could use hydrogen for solar system and interstellar travel. And some researchers decided to figure out if they could create hydrogen in microgravity. But there are problems with this because in microgravity, you know, hydrogen, when you're percolating things through, it creates bubbles. And in gravity, the bubbles separate out from the rest of the solution and there's no problem. But in microgravity, those bubbles end up creating a foam that gets in the way of everything. You know, it's like that froth on the top of your cappuccino that hits you in the face.
Yeah, not nearly as delicious, though.
No, not nearly as delicious, right?
I mean, if it's hitting you in the face, you've got other problems. But I mean, it's, you know, taste, that's a whole different story. So how exactly do they test this here on Earth when we're dealing with gravity?
Right. So we're not in space. I mean, we have the International Space Station there. And so on Earth, what we have to do is rely on great experiments that you could probably do very easily at an amusement park. So the researchers took advantage of a drop tower, you know, very similar to those amusement park rides where you get taken up 7, 8, 9 stories and then dropped, right? Yep. And you feel weightless for a little while. And there's a drop tower in Germany called at the Center of Applied Space Technology and Microgravity. And they have a 4.4-foot pneumatic tube that shoots a capsule to the very top, 400 feet in the air, and then it falls for 9.3 seconds where it's microgravity conditions. And so inside they have a special experimental setup that contains a electrochemical half cell, which is light and electricity powered system to be able to pull hydrogen from water to create these hydrogen atoms and collect them during that fall. And they were able to design special tower structures within this electrochemical cell that got rid of those pesky foam bubbles and allowed actual collection of hydrogen.
Oh, that's awesome. But then there's the challenge of you're flying through space. Where do you get this water from? I mean, you're not just grabbing it out of thin air, right?
Right. No, you can't just grab water out of thin air. It's either something that and the idea, you don't really want to take all that water with you, launch it off of Earth because it's super heavy. So the hope is that we can gather it from asteroids, right? Let's do solar system mining, obviously.
That's what I would have done, but it's nice to know that I'm backed up by science.
You've watched The Expanse. This is going to happen.
So that's the obvious solution. So basically, astronauts, scientists, engineers who are flying through space are just going to get used to tapping into asteroids like a coconut, in other words.
That's what it'll have to be unless there is a very efficient recycling system within whatever spacecraft you're dealing with. I mean, bodily fluids, there's a lot of water that gets excreted. So, potentially there's something there as well.
Yeah, I think that there is. You also passed along a story about CRISPR. CRISPR, I will admit, is something that I've heard of loosely here and there, and I only sort of understand. But from my kind of perception, it's a genome editing tool. And in this article, it's being used for many things, but in this case specifically, it's shown to be effective in rapidly spreading a gene through mammals. But let's start with CRISPR itself. What is it exactly, and how is it being applied here?
CRISPR, otherwise known as, I have to read this because I always forget, clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats.
Okey-dokey.
What? Yeah, well, you are exactly right. It is a gene editing technology that was discovered originally in the defense mechanisms of bacteria, in which bacteria were able to basically shut off attacking the proteins and genes from attacking bacteria with this mechanism. And there's a system that's been developed, the CRISPR-Cas9 system, and others, where the Cas9 is like a pair of scissors that is directed via a very specific guide molecule that takes the scissors to a specific location in the DNA where it goes snip, snip, and something can either be put in or taken out when that snip is made.
Wow. It blows me away that we're able to do this at the level that we are. Obviously, we're doing things that, to even 10 years ago felt like complete science fiction.
I know. I'm blown away constantly by this stuff. I love it.
It's crazy. It's mind blowing. So then, okay, so gene drive strategy. Explain what that means exactly.
All right. So the gene drive strategy is a strategy in which you have a gene that has the ability to spread quickly and rapidly throughout a species. And what you really want is a gene potentially like to kill off malaria-causing mosquitoes. So if you had a gene that affected reproduction in these mosquitoes, you want it to spread rapidly through the population so they can't have babies anymore.
Right.
And you would decrease the number of those terrible mosquitoes.
Okay. And in their testing of this, it was shown to work in females but not in males. What exactly does that point to? Why is that?
Yeah, so the research that is reported this last week is that it's not just working in insects. They've had it working in fruit flies and mosquitoes for a while, but this is the first demonstration of gene drive in mammals. And that's a big deal because most mammals have pretty similar reproductive strategies. Now, it worked, the way that they set it up is they put the Cas9 scissors molecule in the female genome, and then they put that guide molecule I was talking about in the male genome so that when a female and male mouse reproduced, those components would come together in the offspring and slip in a new gene to change the color of the offspring's coat, just to show that they could do it.
Oh, wow.
And so in the females, it worked really, really well. And in the males, it didn't work so well. And the reason is that eggs and sperm are actually produced a little bit differently in that gamete production process. And so they think that that's why they had a little bit less efficiency in males, but it works really well in females. And they had one female that had like 73% of her eggs that had all the components put into incorporated, and if she mated with the right male, 90% of her offspring contained this gene for coat color.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a pretty brilliant proof of concept. And the question now is, there's a real controversy about gene drive. Do we want these kinds of genes that propel themselves through the genome throughout a species to get out of the lab and to get into the wild? And so that is the concern and the controversy. In this study, what they're trying to do is not make a gene that will be released into the wild, but rather to help researchers create strains of mice with very particular genetic modifications so that they can be used to study diseases in the lab that more accurately mimic what we see in various human populations and diseases.
Oh, that's fascinating. Now, gene drive was tested on animals in this case, obviously, and you sent over another story that shows how digital chemical safety testing can possibly replace these more physical animal testing. What kinds of animal tests could be replaced exactly with these types of digital tests?
So if you've ever been on a PETA website, you've probably seen terrible pictures of rabbits with their eyes being pulled open to do chemical testing on eyes. That's the kind of thing that could be reduced in its frequency and its need. So if we had a digital system for understanding how families and groups of chemicals with similar structures and therefore potentially similar properties, how they affect organisms and biology, eventually you can get rid of the need to even try them in animals, because you go, oh, this molecule looks like that molecule, and so it's going to have this kind of an effect, and we can predict this. And so researchers have been trying to create, using big data, using a massive pool of information from previous research and tests, and pooling it together to be able to piece these things together, a massive database of these molecular structures and safety data. And they determined that their digital chemical tests were actually more accurate and better than the majority of the tests that had actually been done on animals for safety testing.
Wow. So, I mean, I was going to ask about the downsides of digital testing versus, I mean, obviously a high success rate, but are there any downsides to this? They're not 100% accurate, and you're never going to be 100% accurate, but is that a reason why someone might be hesitant to explore this further?
There are definitely downsides to this. The big one is that there are some long-term effects of chemicals or molecules that can't necessarily be predicted as easily. And one of those is whether or not they're carcinogenic. So there is the issue that there are maybe some downstream effects from some molecules that could not be predicted solely by the use of a digital modeling system. And so there is a hope that we can reduce the use of animals in research, and that this kind of a system using big data can allow us to do that. But there may always be a need for a pool of animal research to make sure that we're really not making any mistakes when we're dealing with molecules that are going to be used in the human population.
Yeah, and I imagine through the proliferation of artificial intelligence, neural networks, and all that kind of stuff will come into play. I'm sure it already has in this field in a number of ways, and that's just going to blow your mind even further.
Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts of things right now. Neural networks and artificial intelligence are already characterizing and spotting cancerous lesions more accurately than doctors. Mm-hmm. There are a number of disorders where they are training neural networks and these algorithms to identify certain within certain parameters, disease parameters, and they are doing better than humans do. So there is definitely a standard for this. That's a precedent that's already being set for this computer modeling help to make us healthier, make us spot things earlier. If you can spot the cancer earlier, you can fight it that much better.
You can do something about it.
You can do something about it. Exactly.
Dr.
Yeah.
Kiki.
So technology, science, making our lives better.
And that's why you should watch and listen to This Week in Science when you have the chance. Dr. Kiki, you are awesome, and I'm so happy we got you on. We need to do this again sometime. If you'll come back, we would love to invite you back and talk more about science on this show.
I would love to. Yeah, absolutely.
Right
Always fun.
Where do you want people to follow all your work online?
Okay, well, you can find This Week in Science at twis.org, TWIS.org, and you can find me at Dr. Kiki on Twitter. That's at DRKIKI.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Kiki. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Magic Leap continues to be the biggest budget reality warping gadget that no one has ever actually played with, outside of those who work on it within the company, of course. We're almost 4 years into the saga of Magic Leap, and though we know what it's supposedly capable of and we know more about the hardware, it's still a device that's shrouded in mystery. Can it even possibly live up to 4 years of hype? Joining us to give his take is Sean Hollister from CNET. Welcome back to the show, Sean.
Thanks so much for having me, Jason.
It's great to get you here, man. So Magic Leap has the trickle approach when it comes to promoting its hardware, it seems. They broadcast an hour-long live stream on Twitch just this week. Maybe that was yesterday or the day before. Shared new details about the hardware. What's some of the new information that we can actually get excited about?
Well, the big thing is after nearly 4 years of waiting for this top secret startup to show us, what it's going to be doing and when we can actually get a hands on it, we found out that they're going to be shipping the device this summer. They've said they're actually bringing it out, and we've been waiting for that since 2014, I think. In addition to that, we have some idea of the specs now. It's going to have an NVIDIA Tegra X2 system on chip inside for its processing and graphics, and we got to see a demo of it in action. Not a live demo, mind you, something pre-recorded, and something that wasn't all that impressive, honestly, compared to some of the other things we've seen. But
yeah, it felt very much. I mean, I'm trying, as I watch it, I have to try and remind myself, like, things probably look different when you actually have the goggle on and you're looking at your real space with the superimposed thing floating over the top of it. It's maybe not, 100%, as sharp around the edges as it seems like on these videos, which are kind of like, more or less, they're simulated of what you would see, but they're not going to match the same aesthetic.
It's really important. It's really, really important for these mixed reality devices. I've talked to developers of AR, VR, and mixed reality headsets, and they really, really hate showing these things off over the internet. Yeah. They really want to show them to you in person because, for one thing, I mean, you're looking at a flat screen, and no matter what the graphics might look like on this flat screen, you're going to be seeing them, first off, in 3D. They're going to feel like they are a certain distance away from you, no matter how cheap a VR or AR headset we're talking about. That's kind of there from the get-go. They're in 3D, a certain distance away. So this little hand that's pinching here, that little rock monster on the couch that you're about to see or something like that, those are going to be on your table in your living room. You'll feel like they're there. And apparently the magic with Magic Leap isn't these graphics that we're seeing here. It's that they've figured out some kind of way to make them feel more natural to your eyes than even the other existing VR and AR headsets, your Oculus Rift, your HTC Vive, the Google devices. The company has patents dating back several years now for research they did to allow you to kind of to avoid this effect you get. There's an effect called, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there's this effect where your eyes, when you're looking at something that's a set distance away from your face, you point your eyes towards each other. There's a convergence so that you see that object. When you look at something further away, your eyes tilt out a little bit more. Whereas if you're looking at a VR AR headset, even if you think something is, 20 feet away from you, a mile away from you, your eyes are always looking at this screen right here. And they'd figured out a way to give you different depths, different ways to trick your eyes into doing that rotation more naturally so that you don't have the same kind of fatigue. That's what we've seen in their patents, and that's what we haven't seen in person, what you don't see in any of these demos. So we don't know if that's the magic behind Magic Leap.
Right. If it's going to be so important that if anyone even considers getting this hardware, they absolutely have to put it on their head in order to really understand, in order for the universe to open up and they go, oh, now I get it. That's really impossible to show that off online. What we do know about it from what they've talked about just this week is that there's an NVIDIA Tegra X2 processor inside, 64-bit Linux-based OS. From a specs perspective, what does that allude to, in comparison with anything else that might compete with the Magic Leap?
Yeah, the easiest reference is probably smartphones and the Nintendo Switch. If you got a smartphone today, a high-end smartphone like a Galaxy S9 or your latest iPhone, that has a certain level of performance to it. It's based on an ARM processor of some sort, and it's just about how much faster can they make it in each subsequent generation. And they go up sometimes by 20%, 30% each time. But there is a larger, more powerful variant of these ARM processors that NVIDIA has been pushing for a while now. You find it in set-top boxes, and you find it in the Nintendo Switch. And you've seen the gorgeous worlds like Zelda Breath of the Wild on Switch, or if you've seen some of the crazy ports that have been able to do of full PC games like Wolfenstein or Doom, you get some idea. That's a Tegra X1, and this is a Tegra X2. So this is the next step forward there. It's got some extra cores that you don't find in the Tegra X1. They're called Denver cores. It's NVIDIA's own ARM processor, basically, cores that they put in there that are supposed to be even more potent, but also more power consumption than you find in today's Switch and your phones. So this is something that it might get a little hotter, it might consume a little more energy, but you can expect more graphical performance and more processing power there.
And of course, you're having the little puck, the like power puck that it's plugged into, so it's not all entirely contained within the goggles. So that, you know, hopefully alleviates some of the issues that might come from more power consumption, that sort of stuff.
Shouldn't be as much weight in your head because you got some of the weight down there. The battery is going to be one of the heaviest components. Processor and the cooling for that processor, that's generally fairly heavy stuff. All that down on your belt instead of up by the glasses.
Yeah.
And so the question, one of the things we want to know, I really want to know technically about the system is what they are putting up that cable. The theory is that they're using lasers, that they're beaming lasers up fiber optic channels in that cable, so that they're kind of that you don't have screens up in that headset, but rather you're actually beaming light at your eyes, which is another thing that could make it feel more natural. But that hasn't been 100% confirmed yet, I don't think.
Wow, I'm more intrigued than I already was. So one thing that's interesting about this news that we heard is this idea of exclusivity with a carrier. They had announced an exclusivity with AT&T as the carrier that would sell their products. And when we're talking about AR and even VR, you know, products, that never comes into the discussion of, you know, which phone carrier is going to carry it. What does that seem to say about the hardware, that they're actually striking that?
At a base level, it says that there's probably going to be cellular connectivity in this thing, and thus that it might be something you would take around with you into the real world. All of these mixed reality headsets, it's the idea is that you would want to go out in the real world like you would with Pokemon Go, for instance, augmented reality games like that, interact with people and see information laid on top of the real world you wouldn't normally. If you're only doing stuff inside your house, you've already got a computer, you've already got a tablet, maybe you got a TV in the house. This is something you can carry around with you. It's wearable, and you need data for that if you want to do anything. So cellular, at start. But the other important thing, very important thing, is this is a brick and mortar location everywhere in the country where people can go try this, see it themselves, which is tremendous because folks who've been pushing VR have had trouble with that. If you want to go try an HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift, you could do that in a Microsoft store, but there aren't a lot of Microsoft stores out there. For a while, Oculus and Samsung were both pushing in Best Buys, but Oculus had to pull back. They weren't able to make that work there, and I guess there was some expense to it. This gives Magic Leap a place where people can see it, try it, not just on a 2D screen, get a real idea if there's some magic in Magic Leap. And for AT&T, the exclusivity means they've got a hot new reason for people to walk in the door in the first place and sell them on a new phone.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows? Maybe when you buy your next iPhone, you'll get a Magic Leap at half off. That might be a little ways down the way, but you never know. They might have some bundle deal or something like that. After all of this hype, we're 4 years in almost. But I mean, even the almost is kind of ridiculous. 4 years is a very long time for a product that's never been released to be this hyped. What do you think?
Particularly a product that's raised like $2.3 billion or something like that.
It's kind of crazy that both of those facts are true, but yet here we are. Do you think it can possibly live up to the expectations? Are you excited about this more, now versus, before this news? What do you think?
I don't know if anything can live up to those expectations. It might very well be that Magic Leap does wonderful things. It might be that a lot of devices end up doing this. But when there's a certain amount of hype for a product, you kind of tend to dismiss it right away. I mean, the iPad, you could say that the Apple's iPad has been a resounding success to some degree and generally transformed what we do with screens that are larger than a phone but smaller than a computer. But at first, people were just saying it was a bigger iPhone,
right? Because
there was so much hype around it, and then people pointed out the fun thing to point out, which is it's just an upsize of the existing thing. This here looks right now very much like Microsoft's HoloLens. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like it's a substantial step beyond that, unless some of the things we've seen in the patent filings turn out to be parts of the actual product. But that doesn't mean it won't go on to do amazing things, particularly if they're the ones that just, like Apple often does, that they just make it work. Because if you just put the thing on and you say, wow, now I can interact with another layer of reality that maybe I could have done before but was hard, involved having to figure out how to download all kinds of apps and have just the right piece of hardware and build partnerships with all kinds of folks. If they make that work and they have so much talent and so much money behind them, then maybe they're a big freaking deal.
Yeah, maybe there's something to be excited about. Sean Hollister with CNET, really appreciate you taking time. I know it was it was a pinch today, and I really appreciate that. Tell people where they can follow your work online.
Yeah, on Twitter, I'm at Starfire2258, and I'm at cnet.com.
Right on,
my
Sean.
articles are.
Appreciate
Thanks
it,
so
man.
much.
We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Take care. And finally, artificial intelligence continues its trend of trivializing things that were once really hard, or at least required a super talented Photoshop wizard to pull off at the very least. This time, NVIDIA is showing off how its deep learning approach is enabling things that you only ever saw on primetime crime shows. You know what I'm talking about. Zoom in, enhance, and the super pixelated image suddenly becomes crystal clear and you scream, yeah, right, because we know everything about the limits of technology. And then NVIDIA comes along and shows you just how little you actually know about those limits. In this post that we're showing here, they show how the neural network was fed a series, to kind of train it, it was fed a series of noisy and clean image pairs. That was all for training to know what a clear image actually looks like. And then once it's all trained up, the AI can literally remove noisy grain imperfections from photos as if they were never there. Not only that, it can smooth out pixelation, extreme pixelation, and it works on watermarks too. They demonstrated this with a few images that are blanketed with multicolored text overlays, and the AI could easily extract that text from the image. All of those, individual pieces of text that basically cover up the image, it extracts those and replaces them with its own best guess of what exists behind them. And let's just say that the future is kind of hard to believe when it looks this good. I'm pretty sure professional photographers aren't going to be very happy about this. They already, as you probably know, fight tooth and nail to protect their images from unauthorized use. This technology is only going to make that more difficult, but it is super impressive nonetheless. Tech News Weekly records live every Thursday starting at 2:30 p.m. Pacific at twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnw@twit.tv. If you want to sit in and watch the show, email tickets at twit.tv like Shannon and Adam from Cincinnati, Ohio did. Really stoked to have you guys here. They're here on their anniversary in wine country, and I'm honored that they would take time to sit in on the show and check it out live in person. You can do that too when you're on your anniversary out in wine country. Tickets at twit.tv. Thanks to our TD, thanks to Josh, thanks to Burke, thanks to Colleen, thanks to Patrick and his little boy who are looking at me through the window right now, and he's such a cute little baby. And thanks to you guys. You're cute little babies too. Check us out next week on another episode of Tech News Weekly. Oh, and Jammer B, I heard his laugh. See you guys later.